I found it difficult to learn and find things, but to find someone that's in the same position as me, just starting out, maybe a little bit older than the average user, and it's like it just helps to break it down a little bit and just provide something for them to see. Oh, there's a journey here, and I don't have to be amazing when I start. And I definitely didn't get amazing at the end of shuffling, but it's just like knowing that there are people out there like you that are trying it too, and that it's possible. I think there's some videos on there where I look completely ridiculous, but I don't care.
Yeah, part of it is like kind of putting yourself out there, right? By doing and recording and seeing it, you kind of are able to learn and get better and all these things. Cool. You're so good at this, Elle. I feel like we already have a good transition from learning dancing to kind of talking about you. It would be, it'd be really interesting just to hear about your background. You came to Databutton maybe a year and a half ago, and with like a burst of energy, got us super excited, super energized. Having kind of learned data science, working with LLMs, AI, all on your own, self-taught, or at least with the help of kind of the greater internet, I guess. And that's super cool. And it would be super great to just hear about your background from yourself and how you got to be where you are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm kind of like a late bloomer, I guess, from the data science scene and AI and building apps and stuff like that. Prior to that, I was at a company for 17 years, but I had many different roles. So I was, and it wasn't towards the end of my career that I moved into more analytics, data science. And then at that point, I was like, this is where I need to be, when you find your thing. And I think if you come to the emergence of LLMs, for example, I think that's where I found my big spark of where I feel like this could change the world. Like I remember my first prompt that I put into OpenAI Playground. I don't remember the actual prompt, but I remember how I felt. And it was a very similar way to how I felt when I tried Databutton for the first time.
Wow.
It was a feeling of, oh my God, this is going to change the world. Like, but also hope. Like I always feel this. It's like, as long as we're using it in the best way and it's for good, then this could bring so much change for people. It's enabled me massively since I got my hands on it. And and I feel like I think the transition into Databutton, for example, was from me experimenting in notebooks, and I've never been a software developer or done any applications. But then when I found that was all taken care of and it's also powered with AI, and then I came to Discord channel, and you guys were just awesome. And I haven't left. I'm sorry.
We'll have you there.
No, I think it's nice. It's when you find a group of people that are very similar to yourself and share same values and same wants for this technology. I think that's where you find that synergy, don't you? And it just helps fuel you along, and that's how I felt anyway, for sure.
No, that's super cool. I would love to hear. I remember when I first talked to you, you were always kind of pushing me to use LLMs even more than I was at the time. It's like, oh, I'm not really exactly sure how to break down this problem. Oh, did you try asking ChatGPT that question? Oh, I'm not really sure how to design this exact interface. Did you try asking ChatGPT that question? Collaborate with ChatGPT to try to figure out kind of your way through the problem. I know that was very inspiring for me. And I just wanted to hear about, also, I think maybe other people would love to learn a little bit about how you've used LLMs for productivity, how you kind of arrived at that, whether it's for coding or building things, but anything really.
It is literally for anything. And I think for me, like I realized how much I kind of enjoyed and needed it was when I found out. So I have ADHD, so my brain is slightly different. I have an ADHD brain, I guess is where you can say it. But what that means is I've got I've got a few things that I find challenging, so a few things that I find difficult, like reading loads of text, and it's like trying to think my way through things when I'm not quite feeling good. And what this enabled me to do was have this, it's not a person I know, but have this thing I can interact with and break problems down and think things through differently, look at things from a different angle. But the main first thing I was using it for was to understand my brain. So it helped me to learn more about what an ADHD brain looks like, not physically, but what sort of traits, what the challenges are and what I resonate with, and then problem solve through and say, okay, well, I know I have these difficulties here. What could I do about that? So it's just having the ability to speak to something in a language that I choose, a way of speaking that I choose, and not feel like I'm burdening. Access to healthcare and advice at the moment it's very minimal, purely because of accessibility. There's huge wait lists and things like that. But I kind of felt like I have this tool now that I could just leverage and learn more about my brain. I found that I think it helped me to become more aware of some of my challenges and some of my strengths, and how if I lean too much into the strengths, they can actually make my challenges worse.
Interesting.
That sounds a bit abstract, but like, for example, when with ADHD, you can get like hyper focus moments, and what they would look like is maybe building an app all night, wake up in the morning, and it's just like done and it's perfect, and you're like, oh my gosh. Because I was so focused in that moment and I had so much passion for it, and I wanted to get it done. And then the next day I'd find myself completely wiped, like, but then I think the challenge comes then is then you start feeling bad about yourself. Like, why can't I maintain that? Am I thick? Am I stupid? And then you start going in the downward spiral, which means that, you just kind of try and get back on it and try and get back to where you were, but then that could lead to burnout. So understanding that and breaking it down to an LLM and explaining how you feel, it just kind of helps to think it through. And one thing it's helped me to do is accept that, there are things I'm going to struggle with. I either choose to accept that and just move on and go, okay, well, that's something I can't control, or I can do something about it. And it's to do something about it that I find the fun bit. Why I've built some of the apps I've built is because I'm thinking, okay, I've got this problem, it's solvable, maybe I could build something that will help me.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, like, there's quite a few, I guess, peaks and valleys in that experience, and trying to figure out how to have like some sort of energy that is more even throughout the day, week, etc. is a challenge. And I'm curious also, how did you discover that LLMs would be useful for this like purpose in a way? And then how do you have certain ways of prompting or talking to an LLM that both teaches you about your own ADHD, but also reflects in the responses and the conversation that you have with an LLM, so that it gets taken into consideration, whether kind of the way that things are structured and things come back, and the things that you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely, yeah. So going back a few steps, the first thing you mentioned was how I kind of found that this would be helpful. I think for me, it was when I was learning, I was doing my apprenticeship in AI and data science, and before that I was learning on my own, so self-taught YouTube videos, but I would explore the content based on the problem I had and problem I solve. Then moving into a more structured learning environment where you're kind of learning this module right here and it's done in a certain way, which generally is the way it's done, but I did struggle. And at that time I actually had explored LLMs quite extensively, and I built my first chatbot, which meant that, and it was kind of like prompted mainly to help with data science, which meant that if I was going for a topic or on on a learning video, which is live, I would be able to just like literally chat to it to say, could you break this down for me a little bit, because something they said might not have made sense to me. So it's like, so some of the things I like that can help me is break this down, like explain it like I'm 5, provide this as an analogy. Those things are very simple to do, but very powerful, because it helps you to just in that moment, quickly find that out and then get back to it. So when it comes to prompting, for example, so let's use ChatGPT. If you build your own GPT or you put your own little prompt in there, you can put your own preamble, then it tells GPT that you have ADHD and you like things to be broken down. And it's kind of like, as you learn more about yourself, you can actually put more prompts in that main preamble, because every single chat you then initiate will have that contained. And it does a really good job of breaking things down. And every now and then a conversation will come up and it will mention ADHD, and it will be like, if you're going to work on this project, it might be best to make sure you take breaks, making sure that, you can remain focused and things like that. And it does mention why. So it's nice, it's quite subtle. And I think having that preamble is really helpful. And it has just helped to make sure that the content is more directed to me. But I think one of the other things though is I still have the challenge of learning just by reading. If I'm in a good mood, I can blitz my way through a book, but if I'm not, then trying to find something can be quite challenging. And so that is why I moved into kind of building applications that help people that are more visual learners. So it's just kind of, that's where it's gone to.
Let's get into that. I mean, I know at the very least there's NeuroMermaid, which you've shared with us, and I think people out there have requested access and are using, and now you've got kind of on its own domain. I think it's neuromermaid.ai. And I would love to know a little bit more about the inspiration behind it. Like, how did you figure out, I guess, like the science behind it, knowing that this is something that, because there's an aspect of this that's both domain expertise, but then also the building of the application. So you kind of need to understand the ADHD brain and how people think and appropriate ways to structure and lay out information, and then you have to go and make it. So would love to kind of understand a bit of both, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started, I guess it was, again, whilst I was learning, I found actually throughout all my life, I've always got like a pad of paper and I'm always drawing mind maps based on what I'm learning, just grabbing concepts, because if I step away from something, from being so deep in it, you kind of can forget some of the main concepts. And mind mapping tools have been around for a very long time. But one of the challenges with that is you have to make it yourself, or it's very static. It's very, okay, this is a topic, I'm going to give you a mind map, but someone would have taken time to build that mind map. So with that, that's something that maybe we hadn't necessarily thought of automating or making it happen quicker, or providing more of those things, because it would be heavy resource, heavy cost. But they're very useful. They're very especially for, as I say, visual learners. So I know there's a stat through a study that took place which mentions that 65% of people are visual learners. And that for me is quite it's a huge amount of people, and if you're expecting people to go and learn something and it's all written, or it's all because that's the easiest way to do it at the moment, then that means that it's not necessarily accessible to everybody. So the idea behind this was to make knowledge and information more accessible to that 65%. It's kind of doing something that we could not have done before without a huge, massive team of people. High cost and high resource to do. so that's the kind of like the why, it's kind of thinking about, well, there's a need there. And the other part of it is the how, the way I thought about it. And a lot of my problems start like this. I'm like, I'll see something, I'll be like, oh, hang on, there's a language behind that. There's some sort of syntax. There's something that's structured. I'm like, that, I don't need to be writing that out every time if I want a mind map. That an LLM could do that. So then I start exploring and I think, okay, well, does it do it out the box already? So if I say, provide me with a mind map in Mermaid.js code, what comes out? So it's that kind of initial testing.
Yeah. So can I just pause you for a second there? Yes. So like when you said, does that follow some sort of syntax? Is that kind of your way of translating into whether an LLM would be good at solving a specific type of problem, or is it like some other quirk of the way that you think?
Pretty bit of both. Okay. Yeah, I think it's like I'm really fascinated by things that are rendered on the screen. It's kind of like anything that's there has something under the hood that has made it there. Whether it's whether it is a syntax that someone has built an open source library for, that means it comes up in a certain way. Like there's so many out there. And one other example that we did recently was MarkMap, and that just needs markdown code, written markdown text, and it renders as a mind map that you can explore. So it's like being able to look out there and see what ways are there of looking at this information in a more condensed, more manageable way that an ADHD brain doesn't look at and go, oh my God, like, and get put off. And so, yeah, it's that kind of like looking under the hood of some of these tools that we have already. I'm actually really fascinated about Miro boards because they're so flexible and there's definitely code under the hood. And just being able to, I know they already have AI in there, but if you wanted to access it open source, like if someone wanted to build something specific, like what would that look like? And I think that's what fascinates me, is being able to access existing tools, but with this new toolkit that you have. So. Yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, Canvas tools like Miro are super fascinating to me as well. Like, actually, an original version of Databutton was a Canvas tool similar to Miro, where you drew and explained ideas, and like that was like a big part of the product, which I think is still quite relevant when you think about how you would want to explain things, maybe communicate ideas, even to an LLM. So anyway, but going back to NeuroMermaid, the way that kind of you explain a little bit like the vision, why it exists. So where is it today? Like what is the application? Where do you want to take it?
So the application is, it's been the same way for quite a while at the moment, and it does an awful lot. So it's able to consume information from an uploaded file, YouTube video, website. So the ability to take information from your environment is there, and also to generate it from a specific idea. So for me, it was about getting this particular mind map to work on any type of data. It then evolved more into having a chatbot. So it would use Cohere's endpoint, which is has grounded sources. So it can search the internet, and it becomes a really sort of powerful research tool that will provide you with your response that's cited as well as the mind map. So it was just about, I'm really like to be able to have an environment where people can be in the moment and not necessarily have to keep going here, there, and everywhere. And so the vision for it now is to move into Databutton V2. So of course, with this version that's currently available, it's under the hood, it's Streamlit. So it's a Streamlit application. And I'm building out the next iteration, which will be, with the React components and the massive, powerful capabilities that are in Databutton at the moment. And I'm excited about that because there's so much more flexibility and the ability to make it personalized, the ability to add authentication and for someone to actually have an environment where it's their own, that's what excites me, and they can have their own mind maps that they've created and share them out with other people if they want to. But so one of my customers, I guess I could say, is my best friend Zena. She's amazing, but we're very different. We're very opposite. Like I'm, really quite super into tech and all that and AI, and she isn't at all. Like, but she's recently doing a study for Open University, and it's quite new for her. We're both late 30s, and she's new into her studies. Like since school, she hasn't done anything like this, so she was quite unconfident about the ability to be able to find information and understand the topics and the assignments and things like that. So I kind of gave her neuromermaid.ai and said, give this a try. She was a bit like at first, but
oh, it's super cool.
it was lovely, because then I would go around and see her, and she'd have like this text which I knew she'd taken from neuromermaid.ai, all her findings and things, because it was all highlighted as she pasted it out. And she was just like, this is amazing. She showed me some of the prompts that she was asking for, and the way it broke it down for her and visualized it. Yeah, it was just magic. Like to help my friend like that was just amazing.
Was it like a pitch over a coffee, or more? Was it a pitch that you made over coffee, or what was the context?
What, to get her to use it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think I first off, I showed her. So I said, because she'd asked me, I've got this question here, I'm not too sure. And I'm like, have you asked AI? Like we do. So I have no idea how to do that, Ellie. I'm like, okay. Oh. So I got her all set up on the app, and we asked it, and I just love that moment when someone has their first time. It sounds really weird, doesn't it? Because she was just like, wow. She's like, oh my God. Because it's just magic, isn't it? Like to know that that's possible. And yeah, she says that she's on it all the time.
Well, I mean, I think that's a super interesting point, really, right? Like, so you have to be really, in some ways, really interested in AI to go to ChatGPT or another LLM directly and kind of start asking it questions about specific topics, or you have to have seen something that inspires you about it already. Whereas if you build kind of more of a specific experience that is for like a specific problem that somebody has, then they don't really have to like go through the hoops of being like, oh, can I use this general purpose technology for this niche problem that I have?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty hard to connect those dots unless you're really deep into it a lot of the time.
I agree, and I think that's another reason why I do these things. Like I'll go to like talks and things like that, and when I'm presenting, like I won't talk about how an LLM works or anything like that. I'll talk about, here's some applications that people have built. This is what's out there right now that you can get your hands on, and show a little demo of it, because at this stage, there's lots of people that still haven't made that first step. And yeah, the feedback I get from that content's really nice, because they're like, you've really just showed me the way. And I think that's what I'd like to see more of, really, is being able to just get this out to more people, help them to understand it. And I think, yeah, I mean, even just top of my head, I'm thinking like things that I thought I've lined up. Like my mum, she kind of runs a community church in Honiton, and I would love to go there and be able to help people in that community, just to understand what it does, what capabilities there are, how it can help their community for things like raising funds, thinking through activities they can do, helping them, especially with the analysis piece as well. I know that the LLMs are really, moving forward in that area, being able to analyze data. So it's helping these communities to have access to skill sets that they couldn't necessarily, unless there's someone in that group that is doing that already and willing to help. Then it just, there's too many barriers for them to be able to improve their community. So yeah, if we can all do a bit more of that would be quite empowering, wouldn't it, for those individuals, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you already do quite a bit of inspiring work when it comes to kind of giving back to the community, helping out. And one of those things is a kids coding club, as far as I remember.
Yeah.
And it would be really interesting to hear your thoughts on kind of both just young people, education for them as it pertains to coding in particular. We see more and more of our own users, of course, are using AI generated code to build applications. Things are moving really fast when it comes to code generation. And what do you think in terms of the future of coding? What are the young people learning about, and what is important to learn to kind of keep up or kind of be ahead as a, I don't know, a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Well,
12-year-olds listening to this, but
I think it's a similar journey for anyone kind of getting into coding. Because I say I'm quite late into the party myself, but the club itself is it's been up for just over a year, and we do both robotics and coding. And the main passion behind it was to make sure it was free and accessible. So that was a good tick. We managed to get access to the space to learn and things like that, and equipment, which is amazing. But the way I see it is, because I'm aware of the, of course, people talking about, well, coding won't be around and stuff like that. But actually, you're not necessarily learning how to code in these groups. I mean, these guys are using Scratch. So they're using Scratch to drag and drop elements. But what they're learning in that process is, for example, they have these things called sprites in Scratch, where they're little characters, and they can drag them on the screen and code them to do stuff, as in drag and drop. Yeah. So when they're dragging and dropping, if they want to get that sprite to move forward 10 steps when you click, they have to put the right boxes in, which is, it could be things like, for every click, move 10 steps. So they're breaking it down into small steps. And that's just being in the code and actually getting it to do something. But what they're also learning is, if you take a step back from the project you're working on, why are you building this game? Who is it you're building it for? Do you want your user to learn something through this process? Do you want it to be fun and they have to build points up? It's kind of thinking about who's using it and why they're building it and what problems are they solving.
Yeah, so awesome.
Yeah, and that's what they're learning. I think, yes, let's say that code gets completely automated. If these children are learning how things work under the hood, then it's not a black box to them. It means that they can still innovate when they're older. They can still make new things, it's kind of, and be part of that process. But it also helps with everyday life. I mean, problem solving skills that you learn through these sessions are just, yeah, it's amazing. I'm like, I love to see them look at their code and go, something's not working. And I'll come over and be like, oh, okay, well, and they're like, before I say it, because it's so a common thing, like, oh, I'm going to just take a step back. I'm going to look through why. I'm going to trace it back and see. And I can see them literally breaking down the code. And it's a very proud moment. But you can see these kind of behaviors and patterns continue, which would then lead on to everyday life, being able to think things through and not get stuck, I think.
That's super interesting. I mean, it is, like you said, it's not just for kids, really. Like, when we see people coming to Databutton too, or even myself, anybody, you have this big idea of what you want to create, but then kind of breaking it down into, what is the core thing that you're solving? What's the core thing that you need to build for that first? How do you get that in front of people as quickly as possible to then kind of challenge your own ideas of what is important?
Yeah.
And kind of like working that way, and like learning how to kind of build things in that way. And then also, I mean, I guess with Scratch as well, which is super fun, by the way, if anybody hasn't tried it, it's just really a fun tool to build things in. Like logical thinking, like understanding kind of, the sequence of things, how things work, how things are put together, helps you kind of pull apart problems as you kind of get more mature, which is really cool. Awesome. I wanted to take one last second to talk a little bit about Cohere, because I know that they're very special to you. The second when we met, you were already kind of like bursting with like a Cohere like cheerleader shirt. I think maybe the very first time we met, and I know that they're very special to you especially, and I would love to just hear about, you know, like what you love about Cohere, what makes them so unique. And you mentioned that you're using them in neuromermaid as well, which is awesome. So
yeah, sure. So I'll go back to when I mentioned that I'd had my first time with an LLM, and and I think at that point I was wanting to learn more. I was like, okay, how do I learn how this is done? How do I understand this? How do I build something with this? And at that point, you know, it was way before ChatGPT, and I just felt like there's not much out there. There's not many people talking about it until I came across Cohere. And they were so far ahead with their community, as in they had so much content about breaking down how to build with these endpoints. They had a great playground where you could fine tune your own model already. I just felt like they were there at the very early days, but with open doors. And I always remember, I can't remember it word for word, but the theme of their kind of tagline was around breaking down barriers for developers. And it's like, that for me is amazing, because, you know, that's what I like to do as well. I like to break things down for people. I like to make it accessible. And they made it accessible for me. And I learned so much, not just, you know, technically, but also as a person, you know, being able to grow and develop myself and be, you know, kind of put into, let's say, these ambassador position where I'm able to help people, and I'm able to generate this content and have people learn more. So I go back to when I was in that position where I didn't know anything. It was painful to find what I needed to find, and frustrating. So I always put myself back in that place, and kind of like let that be my fire to help and put more things out there that can help people to understand it, to break it down. Because I think once those barriers can be removed, it just enables people to grow. And there's so many people out there with awesome ideas, but they're not sure how to do it. So close that gap a little bit and they'll just be off. And I think that's where Databutton comes in, because you got an idea, go for it. Like, it's just a small step. And so I think with Cohere, they've massively shaped who I am and enabled me to do more to help people. So
that's so cool. I mean, I saw that you recently visited their offices and got to meet I think Aiden Gomez and Nick Frost.
Yeah, that's right. That's so cool.
I mean, that must have been really an incredible experience. You were there for a day or for?
I did so it was a Cohere build day. So they had
right.
it was a hackathon, and it was just such an amazing day. It was so good, and I didn't realize they would be there. So I was like in the kitchen, like networking, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god. I had a bit of a I was trying to explain to people, like, you know, when you see superstars and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what it was like for me. I think because they've been like, they're behind, you know, all of Cohere. They're, you know, it's their leadership and their passion that has got it to where it is now. And I'm just amazed, really. And I got to hear them speak as well, so it was just such a good day.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I'm really glad that you got to go there for the hack day, and that you're with us in our Discord as well, and we look forward to just continue working with you and hopefully we can also help with kind of the vision and the next stages that you have with the application they want to build.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited.